name is James Marion Butler. I was born in Robbins, North Carolina in 1926, June the 1st, 1926. We moved to Newton when I was 3 years old and lived there till I was 14. And went to school at Newton, and then we moved back to Robbins and in 1940. I graduated in 1944.
From?
Elise Academy. It was Academy at that time. I went in the Navy in 1944. Come out in 46 and met Lois Kennedy from High Falls, and we were married in 1948. I got married Christmas Day in 1948. We went to Greensboro to a motel and stayed there 3 days and come home. And it snowed while we was there, big snow. Back then, in them days, you didn't go on big honeymoons like you did when you went to Aruba. Benson Kennedy, I went with him on his honeymoon to Florida. I went with Jack Kennedy, her brother, on his honeymoon. And Frank, I carried him, her other brother, I carried him to get married in South Carolina. Back then, times was different. That people didn't have the cars, they didn't have the money, and nothing else. If you got a chance to go with somebody, you went with them. I have 2 girls, Myra and Kay Lois. Oh, she was born on Pearl Harbor Day, December the 7th, in 1953, I believe. Kay was born at Moore County Hospital.
Where was Myra born?
Moore County Hospital. Myra was born July the 3rd, 3 years after Kay was. I remember she was born in 30 minutes after we got there.
What?
The doctor hadn't even got there, the nurse that delivered her. I worked in textiles. I was a supervisor at Carthage Fabrics for about 10 years, and I did about everything you could think of in a textile mill. I retired from that. When I quit that, I went to work hauling lumber. Before I went to textile, I went to hauling lumber and cross ties and stuff. I had my own truck. Then I went to work with the state hauling dirt for 3 years with my own truck. In 1947, 48, 9. And we helped build most of the roads around Robbins and Carthage at that time. I went to work in the mill, and I retired from the mill in textiles. Fix looms, fix unifields, haul doff cloth, fill magazines, you name it. And I was a supervisor then for about 10 years at Carthage Fabric. She worked at drawing in. She drawed in the warps.
Where was that?
At Carthage. It's the First Baptist Church in Robbins, and I went there, and when the children started the school in 57, 6 or 7, and I've been going there 60-some years. Well, I've been deacon, chairman of the deacons, Sunday school teacher, anything you want to name, I've been it. Sung in the choir, played the harmonica in church. Well, we went camping every 4th of July for a week, somewhere at Myrtle Beach. For years, we went to the mountains, and the children got large enough that didn't care about the mountains, so we would go to the beach. We'd had 7 families that went together every year to different places in the mountains. And after we went to the beach, we went to the beach together. Kenneth Kennedy's family, and D.R. and Blanche's family, and Robert and Juanita Lester, Dixie and Everett, And a Stutz family went with us. There was several. That lasted all during the time that I was working. Well, we went to Myrtle Beach, Arrowhead at Myrtle Beach. And we was camped there one time, and I went to the bathroom, went all the way to the very back. I'd been in swimming and hung my bathing suit up on the line outside of the camper, and I put it on. And when I went to the bathroom, I could feel something quivering, like your heart a beating, and I couldn't figure out what it was. So I went to the bathroom and I was going to check it out, and I went all the way to the back. And when I got to the back, the screen door had slammed, you know. And I pulled my britches down, and just as I started to pull my britches down, a bat come out of my pocket, a watch pocket, flew down like that, and flew out to the door. And just as it got to the door, somebody opened the door. They said, "What in the hell was that?" The bat flew right in his face. I never will forget that. I was drafted in August of 44, the 1st of August in 44. We met at the crossroad. It was a bus picked us up, about 20 of us, and we went to Fort Bragg. At Fort Bragg, they told us everybody that wanted the Navy go over here, and everybody wanted the Army go over here. And they come back about an hour later and said, "Everybody wants the Navy, line up. We've got to pick out a few." They went down the line. They got my buddy Edsel Needham. They got my buddy Roger Williams, and they missed me. I was in the Army. And they went on and they missed my other buddy, Rassie Brady from High Falls.
Keep going.
And you may not believe it, but they signed my death warrant right then. I knowed it. It wasn't no question. I was a dead man if I went in the Army. It went on for they let us stay there for 2 or 3 more hours, and they come back and they said, "Line back up." Said, "We got to have a few more men for the Navy. The buses ain't got here yet." They lined us back up and they pointed towards me, and 3 stepped out. They said the one in the middle, that was me. Just as quick as I stepped out, I was a free man. I know that it wasn't no question. And so from there, they shipped us to Bainbridge, Maryland for boot camp. We stayed up there 6 weeks. We went from there. We volunteered for the armed guard. They wouldn't. It was so dangerous. They wouldn't. If they could get enough volunteers, they wouldn't put you in it automatically. And all 3 of my buddies volunteered, 4 of us, and we got it. So they sent us to Norfolk, Virginia after a little short leave from boot camp, and we went from there to gunnery school in Norfolk. They taught us to fire all kind of guns, machine guns, big guns, everything. Then they sent us to New York. When that was over, they sent us to New York and told us that they sent 2 of my buddies the day before. And then me and the Rassie Brady from High Falls, they sent us next. When we got to New York, we told them that it was time for us we wanted to be together. They said that Rassie's already been assigned, said, "You on emergency breakdown," said, you'll be there till midnight in case somebody jumped ship or something. You'll have to take their place. Well, the boy did jump ship. They called my name at 9 o'clock at night, and at 9 o'clock, I went down to the harbor, and there's a sailor sitting in a little fishing boat. He said, "Throw your gear in." I threw my gear in. Here they went out in the harbor. They pulled us up beside of a 1918 Norwegian tanker, an old rusty thing, empty. It was out of the water higher than this ceiling. They pulled up, and they had a spotlight shining down there, and they threw the rope ladder over, and a rope. I tied my gear to the rope, and they pulled it up, and I reached over and got the ladder, and that fella took off for the coast, back to shore. I climbed up, and there's 3 or 4 up there. Didn't know a soul. They carried me down there to my room, or forecastle they called it, and showed me where my bed was. I went to bed, and I hadn't been in the bed an hour when they come down there and threw the .45 pistol on the bed and said, "You on watch." And I just got on the ship, didn't even know nobody, and didn't even know what to do. Well, I strapped my .45 on, went up to the mess hall. Everybody was in bed except a fellow from Norway and one from another country over there, close by, Finland, I believe. And they was, one of them was playing the violin and the other was singing. And they could speak English. The ship didn't have an American on it except the 10 Navy men that was on there. And so I asked them, I said, "What am I supposed to do?" So I don't even know where I'm at. And they told me, they said, you go relieve this fella in 4 hours. And they took me down there and showed me where he was at. I said, okay. I stayed up there with them, listened to them till went down there and told him, I said, "You're on watch." Well, I went on back up and he didn't come. I pulled my .45 off, went down, I threw it on his bed. I said, "You on watch," and I went to bed. Got up the next morning and we was on the high sea. We'd done gone. And
So you left out of New York?
Left out of New York Harbor on the way to Venezuela, north of Venezuela. Port La Cruz, Venezuela. Went to the mess hall. I didn't know a soul, and I found out a little bit about who was there, and then what my watch schedule was. We had to stand watch on the gun tub up above there, great big gun tub, and above the mess hall where the big gun was, and I made it to South America, Port La Cruz. We come back to, they'd ask me every day, "How you feeling?" They thought I was gonna get sick, but I didn't get sick. So we made it back to Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, we was there 2 days, and 2 of the boys got off the ship to go on leave, and 2 new ones come on. Well, I had my 2 buddies in, and I seen a white boy come on. I went and asked him, I said, "Fellow, where are you from?" He said he's from Carthage, North Carolina. I said, "Good Lord, we're next door neighbors." He was in the Merchant Marine, and he went to Merchant Marine school, and they assigned him to that ship. He was the only only American on that ship, outside of 11 of us, 10 and the officer. Well, we went from there back to Venezuela. another load of oil. 10 days to go, 11 to come back. We come back to Philadelphia, and that boy was sick all the way down there, but he was fine coming back. We left there, went to Port Arthur, Texas. The Merchant Marine put their 2 big long poles out on each side of the back of the ship there when we left, and went to fishing. They had 2 ropes, the longest from here to the highway down there, and a 6-foot wire, clothesline wire on that with a hook, a white and red canvas flapping beside of it. They fished from Port Arthur, Texas to the Panama Canal, never caught a fish. We went through the Panama Canal, went to Hawaii, got a load of oil. They caught fish every day that come. Some of them up as high as 54-pound tuna. Mackerel. I mean, they was beautiful. And the cook, he would fix them. He knowed how to fix. We'd had fish every day. Well, we went back through the canal, went to Aruba, got a load of oil. Went to Philadelphia, unloaded, come back. We got, everybody had to stand watch in the evening for submarines early in the morning. We got 2/3 of the way across the Caribbean, and the captain, I was standing watch on the bridge, and the captain come running out there, grabbed my binoculars and looked out there and turned white as a sheet. Went flying back in there and got his binoculars. And I looked out there, and here come a German submarine on top. It was already a man in the gun. They had one big gun on front of the submarine, and coming straight towards us. Well, I loaded my 20 millimeter. I was on a 20 millimeter. I loaded it and got it ready, and it went to. We cut the ship like this, and as it went around us, we'd go like this, and it done that till we got so dark we couldn't see it and left. Well, we went to. We went on back. Got a load of oil back to Philadelphia.
Real quick, how old were you at this time?
18. And we got back to Philadelphia and unloaded, and I walked uptown, and that's when the sirens went off. Germany had just surrendered. That submarine knew that it was over, and they let us go. We was empty, an old ship too. That's the reason they let us go. And it was all night long. That was everybody. You couldn't even walk in the middle of Philadelphia for the people. You just had to fight your way to the edge. You got over to the edge. And then I got, somebody went to the Italian section, and they had beer out in the tubs, ice down in the middle of the street. I'm telling you what's the truth, they was having a time. But anyway, the war was over. You seen that sailor with kissing that nurse? Well, that could have been me in Philadelphia, just as well as it could have been him in New York. But anyway, they pulled me off the ship right then, and they sent me to Norfolk, Virginia. I mean, I got a short leave, and they sent me to Norfolk, Virginia. They sent me by train all the way across the United States to San Diego. And in San Diego, me and my buddy got a weekend pass. And the Indianapolis that was sunk with all them sailors, it had the atomic bombs on it pulled in the harbor on the weekend, and they crewed it up on the weekend so that they could get them bombs over as quick as they could. And they left. When we come back, our name was on the list. Somebody had to take our place because we was on a weekend pass.
Now, this was before the war was over?
You remember the war was over, but
You dropped-
Japan wasn't. Japan was, we was going over there to get Japan now. Germany had surrendered.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I missed that trip. That's when all them sailors got, if you look up the Indianapolis, you'll find out what happened to that. But anyway, the next day, they called our name, and me and my buddy went on a troop ship to the Samar Islands. And we pulled in there, and it was in the rainy season, and we had to live in a tent city and in the jungle, and the monkeys was climbing up and down the trees, and bananas and coconut and everything growing, and the natives had huts built up this high off the ground with, like you see them, you know, and we stayed there 3 or 4 days, and it never did quit raining, just maybe an hour at a time. And then the natives would come out of the bush. We never did see them until then, and they had a place about as big as this room that they'd come up and put souvenirs out that they'd made out of pearl, mother of pearl, and all that stuff. They'd go back to raining, they'd disappear in the jungle. And then I went from there on a landing craft to Manila. Got on the AKS, that big transport in Manila. Stayed on it a few weeks, and they got orders to go to Pearl Harbor. Went to Pearl Harbor, and while I was in Pearl Harbor, they took all the regular Navy boys off, the reserve off, and put regular on, because that ship was going over there. You remember when they tested them atomic bombs over an island in the Pacific?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they was going over there. And they put regular Navy on, they took us off. Well, they put me on a landing craft, LST landing craft. And it was headed for Shanghai, China. And we got started to Shanghai, China, and they got to shooting albatrosses, and that's bad luck. Well, the motors messed up on the landing craft, and we had to stop at Midway Island. And we stayed on Midway Island for 2 or 3 weeks. Beautiful, beautiful place. And there was one more ship there, a little patrol craft, wasn't much bigger than this room. And we got to talking to 2 boys on there, and they wanted to go to Shanghai, China, and we wanted to go home. So they said they'd like to trade. Well, the captain somebody had stole his beer and had it hid. I knowed where it was at, but I didn't do it. And we asked the captain. He said, "Yes, sir." Said, "We don't want nobody on our ship that steals." He let us trade. And boy, them boys was mad. They had more points than we did to get out. They wanted to trade, but they wouldn't let them. And we stayed there 2 or 3 more weeks. And we got orders to take big barge out, loaded down with ammunition, shells, everything. The tug towed it out there and dropped it off, and then we was going to sink it. They had a 20 millimeter, big 20 millimeter, only gun they had on there. Well, see, I was experienced with that. The captain didn't know it. Well, they got to shooting. These shells, some of them would float, and we had rifles, and we'd shoot them, blow them up. When they come by, here come one by the ship. It wasn't that far from it. And this boy leaned over and popped that thing. And the captain was coming up to the bridge on the ladder. That thing went off. It shot that shell up in the air. It come down and just missed him and bounced in the water. It covered us up in water and old burnt powder and everything. The captain, and boy, he shooed him out. Well, they got ready, when they got it off, they got ready to sink it. And that fellow that was operating the 20 millimeter, he didn't know nothing. He got up there and he pulled that trigger back, and you couldn't see nothing but smoke. And I said, I was standing beside the captain. I said, "You want me to show you how to do that?" He said, "You know how?" I said, "I was in the Merchant Marines, the Armed Guard." He said, "Good Lord," said, "you ought to told me when you come on." So I went down there and I showed him how to shoot it. Just pull the trigger like that. Had tracer bullets. I got him started, and we finally sunk it, but not before they jammed the gun up. And I had to go down there and show them how to unjamp it and everything without getting the hands blowed off. And we got orders to go back to Pearl Harbor. We stayed there 2 days, and then we started from there to the San Diego. And we hit a storm, and there was 2 or 3 days that we slept. We couldn't even stay in our forecastle we had up in the bow. We slept down there in the mess hall. You couldn't keep nothing on the table. But we rode it out. It just covered the whole ship. You just go in them, come out. And we got to San Diego then, and I hit a train to Norfolk, Virginia, all the way across the United States, and got my discharge. I was in there for about 28 months. When we pulled into Pearl Harbor on that AKS, somehow or another, they had a rope about that big around, pulling a tug of pulling us in. That thing got around my leg and pulled me up to the hole just like that. And just as it got to the hole, a little slack come. And there was 2 sailors on each side of me. They grabbed me, pulled me straight up like that, pulled my shoe off, and it took the slack out and went on. It'd have got my leg, maybe if it didn't kill me, it would have pulled my leg completely off. But and them boys done that so fast I couldn't even begin to think about it. And that's the Navy's history.
Lois Magdalene Kennedy. This is James M. Butler.
This is the best thing I ever done when I got her. You wouldn't be here if I had.
Is this going to be a movie?
I don't know what it's going to be.